The question on everyone's mind is, does this have the magic? Does this have the luster? Does this have the staying power, the relevance anymore to be a success like the original was? The original is the biggest movie ever. I don't think it does, unfortunately.
Wherever we go, this family is our fortress.
It's 3 hours and 10 minutes long of Avatar 1, just again, with slightly different locations and slightly different looking things. It has almost the exact same structure, almost the exact same story, and almost the exact same payoffs. It's kind of insane when you break it down. The first one pretty generally is about this jarhead Maroon who shows up on this planet, and he befriends the locals, falls in love with one of them, and kind of becomes part of them, and wants to drive off his own people because they're destroying this beautiful world. It's an environmentalist movie. It's about the destruction of nature, protecting nature, stuff like that, the pushing off of native tribes from their land. And this one is just the same thing. It's literally the same thing, except without a major conflict. And that's the most shocking part. The conflict of this movie isn't the fact that humans are destroying nature. It isn't the fact that there's a mine of unobtainium under a big tree that they want to excavate and destroy these people's homes. No, this time the conflict is that a jarhead Marine who was shot through the chest with arrows somehow has been cloned into an avatar and is back to take revenge on Jake Sully under the pretense that if you cut the head off the snake, the rest will follow in being dead.
Well, Marine, I know you hate these indigenous native people like the avatars are, but you're going to be an avatar, and you're just going to have to live with that because we need to retcon my death because there's no other interesting villains that we could have possibly made, so we're going to make me the villain again, and then probably again in the third. You just got to be a clone now for some reason.
But James has tried to fill in the blank spaces of this story with the vague platitude family. If you just say the word family a number of times, then that makes emotion. Or at least that's what James Cameron thinks. Because the big crux of this movie is the fact that Jake Sully has a family with Neytiri, this this Na'vi woman. They even have like a catchphrase, Sully stick together. And this is all in service of nothing. It's all in service of what James Cameron thinks is an emotional gut punch at the end when one of the family members gets killed, this brother whose name I literally don't remember because he has maybe 5 or 6 scenes. I don't know the exact number, but all of his scenes are the same. They're all, I'm the older brother, I'm the golden child, you, younger brother, needs to follow me, I will take the blame for this. Younger brother, you feel like an outcast, la la la. It's just nothing. It's incredibly trite. It's incredibly cliche. So if we put a version of everyone's family on screen, they'll be emotional about it. And yet, no. Even though this is almost literally my family in terms of the size of it and kind of some of the personalities of it, it's just nothing. There is no character to be spoken of here outside of maybe 2 of them. The younger sister is nothing. She just is a pawn to be used, a MacGuffin to be sought after near the end. The older sister, Kiri, I think is her name, is connected with Awa, the god of this world. And that's all she does. She's just connected with the god and makes his fish spin around. The younger brother is kind of the lead of this movie. Jake Sully's taken a back seat to him because he is the outcast of the family. He's the one that has to learn to grow up all on his own because his father doesn't understand him. His brother doesn't understand him. And it's just trite and cliche stuff. It's really nothing new or interesting. Then the other brother, like I said, has maybe 4 or 5 scenes, and he's just the older brother, the golden child, the one that dad loves, that always takes the blame, that's always trying to look out for his younger brother, but his younger brother doesn't need him. And that's the big thing, man. The emotional edge of this is simply not there, and it desperately needed to be when the story is so generic, so pandering, and so similar to the original. When you kill off a character and try to give the movie emotional stakes, you have to at least know or like the person that you killed to make it emotional, and I simply didn't. And that comes down to the writing, and the writing as a whole is bad. And that's not including the story and all those other things I've already mentioned. The dialogue is dreadful. I mean, wow.
We cannot let you bring your war here.
Outcast. That's all they see.
I see.
Man, that first act is embarrassing. The first 45 minutes to an hour is awful. And it's mainly because it is trying to push our characters into the Way of Water story arc here very quickly, and it's rushing through an incredible amount of information. It's all like trying to just set up that third act, which is more or less an hour-long action sequence that admittedly is really fun, and we can talk more about that in a minute, but the first act is brutal. It has to set up so much. It has to bring back people from the dead. It has to set up 4 new sons and daughters of our main character. It has to set him back up as well. It has to set his wife, Neytiri, back up as well. It has to set the world back up. It has to set the humans coming back to this world for some reason. It has to set so much up that it ends up just feeling like it's cramming information for the hour that it's going on, only to have our characters abandon most of the stuff it just set up to then go set up another place. It's crazy. And then the second act is more or less the first act of Avatar 1, where these characters go into this strange new world and have to learn their new customs and have to ride a horse, but in this case it's an underwater horse, and then ride a flying thing, but in this case it's an underwater flying thing. And then on top of this second act kind of replaying the first act from Avatar for our main characters, it's also trying to play the first act of what should have been this movie, trying to set up this new tribe, the Way of Water tribe, or whatever they're called. It doesn't even matter. Their customs, their culture, these new characters, the family of these new characters, because family's such a big deal in this movie now, and it's just pulling so much weight. The first 90 minutes, which is the first half of this movie, is so bloated and rushed. It is so difficult to stick with and not get bored, because it's just pulling so much double duty and triple duty and quadruple duty trying to set up this world again, where it feels like the magic is slipping away very quickly. If this third movie doesn't right the ship quick, I think the magic of this world, at least for me, is gone. But I'm starting to struggle to see where this is innovative anymore. I'm struggling to see where James Cameron is pushing boundaries, because it is more or less the first one again, with more or less those same type of visuals again, with a worse story and worse structure and worse characters and a worse payoff, which the third act, while fun and action-packed and well executed and well edited and trying to have emotional beats, just falls completely flat because of the first act and the second act and how unemotional it is.
I know one thing. Wherever we go, this family is our fortress.
And then there's the problem of so many scenes just playing out in the exact same way over and over and over again. Colonel Quaritch captures Jake Sully's kids. Come get your kids, Jake Sully. Oh, they got away. I got your kids, Jake Sully. Oh, they got away. Or this new character, Spider, who is the son of the Colonel Quaritch, who actually ends up being one of the more interesting characters in this movie, still is only around to tell Quaritch things that Jake Sully did or didn't do, and to tell him that he's wrong. It just struggles to work for me on almost every level. It just feels like it's missed opportunities. There's so much here that could work, that should work, if it was more laser focused on specific things, like our lead, the young boy of this family. If it was more focused on him, I think this would have worked better. And for a large chunk of it, to be fair, it is focused on him. But it's focused in a way that's really tropey and cliche. And that's more or less this entire movie, just the same movie again, just more tropey and cliche. Now, there are things that work. I think Zoe Saldana continues to stun as Neytiri. She's great in the role. The visuals are strong, obviously. Again, I don't see where this is innovative anymore, but it looks really, really good, and there's some very impressive shots, and I honestly don't even understand how James Cameron keeps track of all this. It's very impressive. And there's some typical James Cameron stuff that I think does actually work pretty well. When this movie's delivering exposition, at times it can fall flat because it feels like they're just telling the audience, this is what this thing does. This is what this thing does, okay? And it doesn't quite work, but when it works best is, for example, there's a scene when they're hunting this big whale thing. I don't remember what they call it. And it's this great 10, 15-minute sequence where our dead, not dead colonel guy from the first one is watching and learning how they hunt these whales. And we see them hunting the whales, and they explain how they're hunting the whales while they're doing it. And when you do exposition through action, it works pretty well, and it was a pretty well-handled scene. There's a couple sequences that I thought worked very, very well. The editing is very sharp. It's as good as it can be, scene to scene. Not, on a whole, I think it could have been edited better in terms of structure. But scene to scene, it's pretty sharp, and it does a good job of balancing certain things in certain scenes. So I give it a lot of credit for that. For being 3 hours long, there's quite a few sequences in this that are very well handled and very well paced. There's a great sequence when they're hunting, Neytiri and Jake are hunting the Marines that have just captured their kids, and it's like in darkness, and it's really well paced. There's some good stuff in this. It's just too bad the big stuff that it had to get right, it really doesn't. So that's kind of Avatar 2 for me. It's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag of really strong things and really weak things. There's nothing I particularly hated so bad that I want to burn this movie to the ground, but there's nothing I particularly loved about it that I want to go see it again. I didn't see it in IMAX 3D like James Cameron wants me to, and I won't, because it just didn't work. I give it a 5. If you like this world, you've probably already seen it and know that you like it, so whatever.